In today's review, we will continue the theme of apocalyptic threats to humanity by taking a look at Neal Stephenson's Seven Eves. Seven Eves is an 872-page strong standalone novel that was published in the year 2015, and the story sets off in the not-too-distant future. It is considered to be reasonably hard sci-fi. However, due to the significant differences between the first two-thirds of the book and the latter third, owing to a substantial jump in time, Seven Eves as a whole remains hovering roughly between the sci-fi hardness of Sapphire and Diamond. This dichotomy is also relevant with regards to the world building, which is certainly noteworthy but not exceptional in the first parts, but then figuratively explodes, as we will discuss in more detail later. In the same vein, the book is peppered with original and intriguing ideas. Fortunately, this does apply to all parts of the book. Furthermore, the dramatis personae consists of roughly 24 characters, giving Seven Eves a broad cast that does not reach outlandish sizes that might hamper the storytelling itself. In terms of critical reception, Seven Eves was nominated for 7, how fitting, awards and won 3 of them, according to Goodreads.com. With a combined score of 4 out of 5 stars based on roughly 100,000 reviews and ratings, Seven Eves seems to have satisfied a wider audience as well. A movie adaptation of Seven Eves is also being considered, with William Broyles Jr. as screenwriter, Ron Howard as director, and Brian Grazer as producer. However, there are currently no news with regards to its release date or even further developments. Also, it will be quite challenging to adapt the novel in its current form, specifically due to the substantial time jump. We shall see how this turns out though. The plot of the novel kicks off when the moon disintegrates into a couple of big chunks after being hit by an unknown impactor, possibly a primordial black hole. It takes a bit of time, and the collision of 2 of these chunks, for scientists to realize the significant danger this poses to life on Earth, obviously including humanity. There are only roughly 2 years left before massive amounts of the remnants of the moon will hit Earth in the form of bolides that will have formed via cascading collisions. This will heat up the atmosphere, boil away the oceans, and make Earth uninhabitable for thousands of years. The entire world makes desperate efforts to set up an orbital infrastructure in the form of a swarm of small, so-called arklet, habitats that can save humanity from extinction. The ISS, which is connected to the captured asteroid Amalthea, functions as the main hub and provides some protection against the increasing barrage of moon debris. There are a lot of things that can and will go wrong during the planning and execution of this daring plan. However, after seemingly insurmountable challenges, the last remaining survivors are able to establish a secure habitat. This concludes the first 2 parts of the story, and after a substantial time jump of 5,000 years, the descendants of these last survivors are ready to return and reclaim Earth once again during the third and last part of the novel. It goes without saying that Seven Eves takes the cake when it comes to the death of characters. So do not get attached too much to your favorite astronaut, engineer, scientist, archie, or entrepreneur. And there are some aspects of the story that should creep you out, if you think about them long enough, that is. Nevertheless, Neal Stephenson's writing style, while sometimes quite technical, somehow was able to make Seven Eves a fun read, irrespective of the dark plot. However, there are some valid criticisms related to Seven Eves. For one, some of the characters can appear to be a bit one-dimensional with more or less just a singular trait to them. Although it has to be said that this is somewhat relevant for the last part of the book without going too much into spoiler territory. Seven Eves is certainly not the worst offender in science fiction literature when it comes to lackluster character development, and some of the main characters are quite likable. Another point of criticism is related to the scientific soundness of the story. Indeed, it is hard science fiction. However, on the one hand, the biotechnological aspects seem quite speculative if we take the premise that the story starts in the not too distant future. On the other hand, using today's technology, it would probably be possible to launch substantially more equipment and people into Earth's orbit in 2 years, with the industrial might of the entire world focused on this singular purpose. But Seven Eves was written in the late 2000s and early 2010s, which just underlines the technological leaps that were achieved in recent years with regards to space launches, not least owing to companies such as SpaceX. Furthermore, there are a couple of somewhat spoilery maps added to the inside of the book covers, which will obviously depend on the edition and are not related to the story itself. I just wanted it to mention here as well though. Finally, my biggest gripe with Seven Eves is that the third part feels seriously disjointed from the first 2 parts. Don't get me wrong, it is an interesting and intriguing part, especially considering the world building. However, there is just not enough time left in the story to really flesh out this new setting 5,000 years in the future. Furthermore, the roster of new characters also remains quite flat, again due to the restricted time we spent in this part of the story. As mentioned previously, how this can be adapted in a movie remains to be seen, but this time jump would work even less in a 2-hour movie. If it were me, I would have split Seven Eves into 2 separate novels, where the first 2 parts would remain more or less unchanged as the first novel. The second novel would then consist of the world building that we already got in the original last third of Seven Eves, but with a more fleshed out roster of characters and a substantially expanded plot. But who knows, maybe Neal Stephenson will revisit the world that he constructed in Seven Eves in a future novel. He definitely created the perfect foundation for an interesting story. Overall, Seven Eves does have its flaws and drawbacks, but it is certainly worth a read if you are interested in hard science fiction with a darker plotline, intriguing ideas and a vast world building, the latter point specifically in the final part of the novel. After all, it is quite telling that one of my main criticisms of Seven Eves can be rephrased as the story being over too soon. If you liked this video, you may also enjoy the other reviews and content on my channel. Feel free to leave a comment if you want to discuss the novels or if you want to suggest other books that I should review in the future. Please consider upvoting and subscribing, it is much appreciated. Thank you for watching and until next time.